Welcome back to the studio discussion here, and joining us now here are Mr. Edward Lehman, Managing Director of the Lehman, Lee and Xu Law Firm, and Professor He Jiaohong with the Renmin University. Both are legal experts. But the first question is obviously about the quality and the quantity of the legislative work of the NPC between last March and this one.
I think that the report made by Wu Bangguo was very impressive. Talking about the quality and the quantity of the legislation, I think that the quality is even more important than quantity, because for the rule of law, we have to make good laws. What are the good laws? That means the laws must be in accordance with the spirit of the law. Basically, that's the fairness and the justice. So in last year, the top legislature of China considered many draft laws and passed some. For example, the bankruptcy law and supervision law, and also give the consideration of the property law. So when they are considering the laws, they have to try to strike a balance between different interests. The interest between, the urban residents and the rural people, the migrant workers and their employers, and also sometimes the interests of individual and the government.
Yeah, it's all about quality and not about quantity. I mean, I remember when I was a small boy, and my father said he's going to take me to the tallest building, where's going to be the spot of the tallest building in the world, the Sears Tower. That was in the early 1970s. He takes my hand, he brings me to the place, it's on Wacker Street, and I take a look at it, and I see a huge hole. That's what I see. And I said, what is this? I thought you were taking me to the tallest building in the world. And he said, yeah, you've got to dig a hole as deep as you have to be able to build a foundation, to be able to build a very tall building. And so that hole became then later the tallest building in the world. And it's all about, building 24 columns that are a foundation on which we can hang the framework of this tall structure that is a building. So it's really about quality and not quantity. Don't mistake activity for achievement. So I think what they've done is they've really achieved and tackled some very tough issues and done it in an extremely thoughtful way, certainly.
Let me go to Professor He Jiaohong before I get back to you. When you say good laws must be deliberated in the past by the top legislature, what do you mean? Do you mean also bad laws are inevitably formulated sometimes?
Yes, sometimes.
Can you read some examples?
When we are talking about good laws and bad laws, first I mentioned that it must be in accordance with the spirit of law, that fairness and justice. Another thing is we have to consider the applicability of the law. Do we have the ability to enforce the law? Do we have the resources to enforce the law? Let's take an example, you have a car, right? You have to pay the highway maintenance fee every year, no matter you drive the car on the street or not. And someone said it's a better idea, to turn the fee into the gasoline tax, right? It's a good idea. So we made it into the law. But do we have the ability to enforce the law? We have a lot of problems. The obstacles set by the local governments and by certain departments. So if we think that the law, we just make it like a slogan, it's useless. And even ruin the credibility of the law. Another thing is when we are talking about the law, let's take the property law as an example. According to the draft law, all properties are equally protected, no matter it's a private property, a collective property, or state-owned property. For individuals' properties, of course, you have the right to own it, to use it, or even to dispose it, let's say to sell it. But if you sell it in market, that must be with your willingness, with your will. But according to the draft, we have to consider this issue. In some cases, if it's for the public interest, the government, the state, may take your property, right? But we may use the word that's acquisition. This is a kind of compulsory purchase of your property. But if the government take your property, you should get some compensation. Mm-hmm. So when we are making the law, when we are considering the laws, to make it a good law, we have to consider two key words. First, what is public interest? How to define public interest? The other is what should be the compensation? how much money you should get from the government, from the state, when they take your property. So all these problems have to take consideration. If we cannot strike a good balance, the laws may not be good.
Well, we take it for granted that the laws are more serious than regulations, but China, we have seen the approval of thousands of regulations ever since the early days of opening up and reform. The example that Professor He cited at the beginning of his comments was about the gasoline prices and whether the taxes and the fees should be combined together. But some of the regulations, for example, those passed in the early 1980s, could be very expensive and could be irretrievable in terms of losing some of the dear lives if they were not handled properly. Why was the right given to the Provincial High People's Court to carry out the death sentence, and why this right is taken back by the Supreme People's Court? Obviously, some terrible mistakes must have been made.
No, and yet that was a very wise decision to bring it back. It seemed like it made sense, actually, to leave those decisions up to provincial courts, up to local courts, and not have it be done from a top-down situation. But the truth be told is that those courts were actually, in many instances where things went wrong, were actually rubber stamping, and they weren't having a full-blown appeal. They were actually just looking at the paperwork and approving or disapproving. The same people who had made the initial decision were making the secondary, the appeals decision. And so what they've done is they've actually brought it back up, said this is a very serious thing. An individual's life is at stake here. We're looking at it in a populist way, and we're looking at it for a rule of law and transparency for the whole world to look at. And the truth be told, that was a very good move. It sounds more complicated, but it's actually a move in the right direction. And I think that time and time again, the Chinese government has been extremely thoughtful, and they've actually made it better for foreigners and other people to be here and protected their rights and interests. When that's not a popular approach. That's a difficult approach to make.
Well, thank you very much. We have to leave you there for the moment. You are watching a special program of Voices and Votes with Mr. Edward Lehman and Professor He Jiaohong. You are watching our special coverage on the current sessions of the CPPCC and NPC. It's a debate about policy issues as well as other major motions submitted by both members of the CPPCC and the NPC. Don't go away, we'll be right back. If you want to have more information, please take a look at our website at cctv.com.
我们现在经过这么多年，社会主义法治体系基本建立，但是一些群众非常关心的、跟公民经济有关的一些重要的法律还亟待制定，包括这次的物权法、税法，也包括下一步社会问题一些法。我是原来搞劳动和社会保障工作的，比如说这个促进就业法呀、社会保障法啦，这些法需要赶快制定。
最大的感受呢，就是代表全国人大会啊，充分发挥了、履行了自己的职能，是吧？在这个立法工作方面成绩显著，在这个为发挥代表作用方面也一样，是吧？去年我们这个广西代表的，就是组织我们这个人大代表搞这个调研的有很多组。最起码有7、8个组，每个人大代表都去调查，所以我感到呢，这个人大代表大会啊，真的是越来越发挥作用。
Welcome back to our Voices and Votes, the special coverage dedicated to the ongoing annual sessions of China's top lawmaking body and the top advisory body. China is experiencing a transitional period from planned economy to a market one. As the country's top legislative body, the NPC has the exclusive power of making and revising the laws of the land. Our reporter Mao Xuzhi interviewed a senior official of the NPC to get her views about the Congress legislative